Yeah, good morning, John. This is Rick.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, John, it's Eric here. It's been a long time no see here. How are you?
How are you, Eric?
I'm doing very nicely. It's good to hear from you. Welcome.
Okay, it looks like we also have Bjorn Seiss and Nikos Vasilidis. I apologize if I pronounce your name incorrectly.
No, it was a good effort.
Uh,
And good morning, this is Bjorn.
Good morning. Okay. So I guess we can go ahead and get started. I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to do once it was offered, Eric and Carol said, "Hey, how about Alex has joined us? Excellent. Rather than doing a teleconference, how about we use the GoToMeeting?" And I think that's great because we can share things more easily. You can. I think my screen is now the live screen. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so that's good because if there's something I can pop up and show or whatever, that's good. The organization chart was really the thing that I had in mind to share, but because people would send me an email and say, hey, we have some questions about what your the TNR program, and rather than trying to have that that discussion with the 5 different people, I thought it would be better if we could all get together and the questions can be they can be symbiotic. We can feed off each other, and hopefully we'll learn more that way. So I guess the brief description here. I'll go ahead and make this full screen. This is the TNR. This is the TNR organization as we have it. I apologize, it's a bit of an eye chart. There are currently 10 parent committees and 90 panels on them for various specialties. We've just added a new panel, M49, primarily to work on the updating of TNR Bulletin 4-16, which is the HVAC guide. We are in the process of kind of revamping this organization. A number of these panels are not terribly active. Some are actually inactive. And by the end of this year, beginning of 2017, we're going to place panels that haven't had any activity in over a year on an inactive list. We won't lose any of the information they've got. That will all be preserved. But if they don't have an active champion and active membership, then they'll be placed inactive, and we will be forming new panels with new champions to take over what is currently of interest to people. So that's, we have I think a panel for everyone, and if we don't, we can probably make one. So that's I think that's basically where I'd like to start. Our function is technical and research. We produce bulletins and guides. We get together and we exchange technical information. Those are the things that we do primarily. And as I said, some panels and committees are much more active than others. But there is quite a lot of activity going on throughout the organization. Much of it, unfortunately, underneath the radar screen of SNAME. So we're working on that. Trying to get ourselves to be a little bit more high profile so that the general membership has a better idea not only of what we do, but how they can participate. So let me open it up and let's get some questions going, get some dialogue here. Dead silence. So Stephen, Nick, John, and Bjorn, you folks had some questions. Please, toss them out. Stephen, I see you don't have a live mic, so if you have a question, if you want to go ahead and type it in, we can share that on the chat box. Alex Landsberg is also on, but his mic is not live either. So, Alex, if you've got a mic,
Alex is in the conference room with us, Rick.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay. Well then, Alex, you can participate live in the discussion.
Prove I'm alive.
I guess my question, or my first question with all this is how do I figure out where where I fit into this structure? Where I can contribute. Is there a way to know which of these panels are active so that I can see where my interests or my experience aligns with what's going on?
Well, at the moment, we don't have a good way to say any particular panel is active or inactive. One thing you can do, and we'll see if I can do that easily this morning, is pop over to the SNAME website, and we'll log in, and you can go right to the TNR program and look at the individual panels. And you can see it's logged me in automatically, which it will do if you're using a computer that you regularly use. Now I can go to the technical content and take a quick look here at TNR committees, which is and I will say for the folks at HQ, when I did this as a demonstration last week, the one link that I went to was broken. So we'll hope that that's been fixed. The org chart here is this is the eye chart that we were just looking at, and it is a little small, but we can make it. You can see here that we have all of the. You make it big enough to actually read, that you can see what's going on. Now, one of the most active committees is the Ship's Machinery Committee, because a lot of the bulletins that we do happen to fall under them. The Hydro Committee has been quite active over the last few years. Roger Basu is rejuvenating the Hull Structure Committee now. Safety, Operations, and Economics has been very active. Ship Design has been very active, particularly panel SD8 down here. The Environmental Engineering Committee had a big burst of activity, and then it went not dormant, but it slowed up quite a bit, but it's starting to get active again. And the Forensics Committee over here is very, very active also. The Offshore Committee has been working on a couple of guides over the last 2 years. So there's a lot of activity across the entire, and the Ship Production Committee, I should say, the Ship Production Committee is essentially the technical committees of the National Ship Research Program, NSRP. The chairs and the committees, these exactly reflect the NSRP organization. So they're really active. Last year funding about $11 million worth of work, but that doesn't come directly through SNAME, although the committee chair, Rick Spalding, does report to us. We don't have as much, and we have lots of members on here. These are primarily at this time NSRP panels. So what would be your interests? I guess that's the key. What do you want to do? And then we would hook you up with the parent. The way this works is if you're interested in something, you would go and contact the panel chair or committee chair directly and say, hey, I'm interested in what you're doing on here, and so I'd like to join one of your committees. Committee chairmen get to appoint panel chairs and their own members. The panel chairs get to appoint panel members, and so it's the way we try to do this is direct contact. So let's say you're interested in the Hull Structure Committee. We could go here and we can click on the link for the Hull Structure Committee, and it takes you to their site. And you can contact Roger directly by clicking on his link here, and that takes you to his membership information, and also allows you to contact him directly via email or his phone.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that was the main part that I wasn't clear on, is that we can just contact the chairman of the committee. Okay.
Right now,
Yeah, definitely.
that's been clear. Okay, so that that's a good thing for us. So we need to make that a lot more obvious. I've been trying to mention that every time I do a presentation, but I guess it needs to be right here on our website. So we'll do that. Now, if you wanted to look at individual panels, you would take the link to the panels here, and I can give you an example of a panel that's not very active because I'm the chair. It's HS12, and I haven't really had time to focus on that. And Roger and I are trying to find a new champion. But if you were interested, for instance, in the impact loading and response, if you click on that link, it should take you to their local site and allow you to contact their people directly. So in any case, I have asked people that if you do contact any committee or panel chair and say, hey, I'd like to participate, please copy me on the email and let me know if you don't get a response, or if you do. I want to know. I've had some complaints in the past that people don't get the responses, that they'll send an email and nothing happens, and we've told all the chairs that just isn't acceptable. If for any reason you don't want a person on your panel or committee, it is their decision, but they should be able to explain it, and they should at least have the courtesy of responding to any email contact or telephone contact. Just it's part of our job. So that being said, so that's really the best way to deal with that. If you go into this join a committee or panel link, it basically takes you to the panel websites that we just accessed looking at the TNR page. But this is the same link. If you want to look at the hydrodynamics committee, for instance, it would take you to the hydro committee chair, and again back to the individual committees and individual panels. And so you can see here the latest addition. Eric is the new chair of this particular panel. It's kind of interesting, I find, that a lot of our members seem to want to stay anonymous. We only have a few photographs here, which I find interesting. It just means people haven't put pictures in their profiles. So that's one thing that we can do. Oh, where else would we go here on questions? We have lots of areas of interest. I think we cover many, not all. I don't think it's possible to cover all, but we cover many aspects of the marine business. I guess where would you like to go today? Was the question.
Yeah, one other question I had after looking at this chart, is there a committee that's focused more on the regulatory side, new IMO regulations that are coming into force, or is that a thing maybe you've gotten into?
Alex, you want to kick in on that? I mean, I think that the operations and safety one would be the committee, but I don't know if there's any particular panel. You're talking about like Coast Guard regs, like the new chapter, subchapter M stuff that's come out?
Yeah, sure, like that, or new IMO regulations that are coming into force. The other one was this new, the Tier 3 NOx requirements that came into force this year here in the U.S. I don't know if do we put anything out to the industry when those kinds of things happen?
We haven't been putting out anything that is that directly reactive. If there's something new coming out, we haven't been showcasing it, I guess would be a good word. The environmental engineering folks over here, they put out a number of bulletins and guides over the last couple years talking about new regulation and meeting the regulations. I know the stuff that we've been working on here under ship's machinery focuses on bringing our guidance in line with international requirements. we don't precede them these days. For the most case, we're not really cataloging them, but we do discuss the guidance and international regulations and talk a little bit about what's required to meet them, and perhaps providing some guidance in ways that you can meet the international requirements. But maybe 25, 30 years ago, SNAME was in a position where there was virtually no guidance or regulation in many of these areas, and so our guides were the guidance for ship owners and operators and designers. That's not the case anymore. Both IMO, ISO, ASNE, and ASME have put out a large number of guides, and for things like vibration, pollution, and they actually lead, in many ways, lead the federal regulations as well. So much of we're in the process of revamping many of our guides because they've been overtaken by events. Things that were very valid to say 20, 25 years ago have now been overtaken by, for instance, ISO or IMO regulation. So we need to be careful to not contradict current international standards.
The regulatory standards and other kind of standards, basically you are by subject area. So for instance, if you are interested in the stability standards, you go to the stability panel, which is, I mean, they're right on top of what's happening with everything in stability and creating things. The offshore committee also has groups that are working on the new regulations for IMO. So it's all set up by subject area rather than by one place that addresses all regulations.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but Rick, we really need to, I hear from a lot of the international members that we need to have some regulation communication on what's happening at IMO. Why aren't we involved? Of all the things that happen at TNR, I hear that more from not only the Greek and Italian and UK sections, but even the US section. And we continue to kind of come back to add IEEE and all that kind of stuff, and those cats don't use that. They're all, international regulation. So somehow we need to kind of up our game in that area.
Rick, we had, and I guess part of it depends on what are we talking about here? Are we talking about informing the membership of developments and impact dates, or are we talking about shaping the impact of the regulations themselves and having a discussion on forum or an ability to create some kind of community approach to the shaping of the rules and regulations as they come out? Or is it also a matter of having a resource to identify appropriate regulations and rules when you're approaching some kind of project,
Well, we have a seat on the RENA managed IMO committee, and I still haven't figured out who the name of that seat holder is, but I heard from Trevor. Well, we don't hear from you.
Well, there's very little we get from RENA. I mean, the guy that does it at RENA sends me whatever he does.
That's RENA is on the
IMO.
That's more or less on the structural and naval architecture side. So IMRS on the operational side. We have the same access.
I don't know about that.
But Rick doesn't have those people, and we don't have it identified in our organization. So yeah. I didn't really know until I sat down with Trevor. Trevor gave me a 45-minute audience a few months back in his office, which just floored me. And so one of the topics was, how does SNAME and RENA work? And he said, well, we have this committee, but we don't ever hear from your representative. And of course, that's the Trevor side of the story.
Right.
We just heard, our side of the story. But, still, but until you make that visible somehow in a committee or reports or that type of thing, then people are just asking,
On the org chart, if you, Rick, if you can scan over to the right side of the org chart, there is a subcommittee of PNR, that subcommittee on standards, and that's the place where but it's not very active. So that's the area where we should really try to make this happen. I know the Society of Naval Architects in Japan, they have actually an ITTC committee. So it's a whole committee focused on the ITTC meetings, and we could do a lot more in those areas if we have enough interest. But right now, some of the panels are really creating the stuff, but there's no organization component on here that really identifies it. But,
speaking of ITTC, do we have an ATTC component on our?
Not on the chart, no.
Not on the charts. Yeah, our ATTC component would have been through the hydrodynamics committee here. You know, and its various panels, but all of those would fit into an ATTC or an ITTC mode, actually.
Yeah, the ATTC group is trying to get Cotterock to sponsor their next meeting. And I guess there's been some resistance or miscommunication or something at Cotterock. So I volunteered to try to help them with that. But, you know, it really ought to come through SNAME. I mean.
Yeah. Stephen had a question that he typed in. He said, what exactly are the roles as a committee member? If you are interested in pursuing research for a certain subcommittee, what steps would you take after getting accepted into the subcommittee? Well, we do have ways of proposing research through the, you know, if you're interested in a particular research topic, that would be something that you would bring up. You would join your panel, and then as part of the panel discussion, you would bring up your particular interest in research, and you get support through the panel for that research. And I'm talking about not monetary support at this point, but you know, the support for moving it forward, and then it goes up through the committee chair. And for committee discussion, it says you're interested in doing a particular kind of research. Now, normally that you would find that there would be some interest in the other panel members in working with you on that. We do have ways of having some small internal funding for projects. There is a proposal format that we put together. That you can, if you need some financial support, you can do that. But it's at this time we don't have a great deal of resources to cover that funding of research. But we do on a case-by-case basis consider it, and when funding is available, we do fund research projects. Most of the work that's done is still at a volunteer level. At the very much the vast majority is done at a volunteer level. By one or more panel members working as a collaborative effort within their panel. So does that, you know, so that the role as a committee member is basically participate in the discussion and share your information with others, and you know, just be a proactive member of that part of the technical community. And it's not a difficult job. It's fun.
And actually, it can be your intuition as to what needs to be done. I mean, it's a group of volunteers. They are interested in a subject area, and your interests are as interesting to the others as the others perhaps are interesting to you. So you can bring up a project.
Yeah, I mean, people, we talk a lot about. Sorry, we talk a lot about what we get out of SNAME, and you know, this is something that I've always found to be pretty rewarding. I mean, and the technical aspects of our profession, I think is, you know, for me, it's one of the most fascinating. And there is nowhere where you can go in any other technical organization in the marine industry. All of, you know, we are the only ones that have this kind of a TNR organization, where you can go and find other people that are interested in your technical subject and want to exchange ideas. I mean, this is a technical forum where you can exchange ideas on the highest levels and collaborate with your technical peers and learn. You know, it's an opportunity that you simply don't have anywhere else. And so I guess we've been flying under the radar for a long time there, but it is to me, it's the collaborative spirit of the TNR program is one of the things that is its greatest strength, perhaps.
And if you can't find it on the chart, and you've asked people and it doesn't seem to be on the chart, perhaps we can create that group. Like we were just discussing, we don't really have a very active central place where you can find out what's going on with the regulations and standards. But perhaps that's something that is really needed. But it's whatever your passion is, you need to bring it to the TNR.
Right, and not listed here because this is this one, the freshly created panel M48, that, or M49 rather, that is for the HVAC program, and it was created almost specifically to help rewrite the HVAC guidelines, the TNR Bulletin 416. That effort is being spearheaded by a few people who have taken over the guidance of that panel, and they've brought in other folks that are interested in the HVAC problem. You know, and after they've updated 416, that panel may stay active because there's something always going on in the the HVAC world. Or it may kind of fade away and become inactive for a few years until the bulletin needs to be updated again. We don't know. We'll have to see what happens with that panel as we go forward. But as Alex was saying, if you had a particular interest that doesn't seem to be covered here, with the we discuss it with the parent committee chair, and there's no reason that we can't stand up another panel, providing there's a champion in sight. And if it's your idea, you would be the obvious choice for a champion on there to lead the effort as you move forward with whatever it is that you're interested in. So, any other more questions, more discussion?
I have a question on people doing research within a single panel. Is it more like one person doing some research, bringing it to the table, and everyone discussing it, or how do people go about doing their own research?
Oh, I think that's going to vary greatly panel to panel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the fishing boat folks, they've done a lot of collaborative work, but I know there are individual members that have gone off and done work, and then they bring it back to the panel and kind of put it together as a group rather than the one individual. The same thing with the air incline that turned into a bulletin. One or two people will primarily do the work of putting the research together, but then a group will assemble the knowledge into a document. So I think it varies greatly. Alex, you've got a lot more experience along those lines.
Yeah, some of the panels simply discuss things. Other panels have lots of projects. They can be, and panels that have a lot of, each individual panel has a lot of projects and break down into little task forces. One way to run the panel meeting is to simply have a review at the beginning of all the projects that are going on and then break into smaller groups. Not all panels meet that much anymore in large groups, so we're all on the phone and you can have meetings in between meetings. It's really up to whatever you're interested in and pursuing it with people that may have the same interest.
Yeah, for instance, SD8, the naval ship design, a large number of the members of that panel live in the Washington, D.C. area, and they have regular panel meetings, and they put on I have to be careful because it's a word. I think it's symposia or a workshop that they'll put on where they'll have half a dozen papers come and presented from their members as a more formal, and of course they invite others. It's open to the public, but to have a more formal presentation of information. So it's quite a wide range of things. Okay, I see John's left us. Okay.
Panel 036, economics has had a number of mini workshops, which are basically the members and a few other invited guests. So everything is possible, basically. Just working with a group of people of similar interests on a task, or as a standing committee, or as a task force, or as a, what we used to call them, a special panel just for a particular time frame.
Kind of the ad hoc panels that come in.
The word I was looking for.
Hey, was there any other questions that we can answer for you?
Sorry if I may. Most of my questions were covered. Are there chances or occasions that a panel or subcommittee formed a research group and submitted proposals for larger externally funded projects?
Yes, there have been several recently. There was a funding for the offshore committee that they did some wind tunnel work for getting new loading coefficients for offshore platforms and MODUs. That had funding from, and not just from SNAME, they had funding from a number of organizations, the oil companies and other players in the industry. See who else? The fisheries folks have had some funding for doing some fishing vessel research with some model tests. And the big one here would be the Ship Production Committee, which is essentially the National Ship Production Research Group. Their funding comes from the Navy, and with the larger projects, there is a cost share from the industry participants. Most of that work is done through shipyards. And it is U.S. centric because of the Navy. The source of funding is U.S. Navy funding, but that particular group funds a number of projects, probably 8 or 9 projects in the $100,000 to $150,000 range a year, and maybe half a dozen projects that are between $1 and $3 million over a 3-year period. So that is very heavily funded outside SNAME, and SNAME's interaction there is that our Ship Production Committee is the technical group that selects those projects, but they report back through the NSRP to the that is their body. It's kind of a it's a crossover area for us, where it started with SNAME, drifted apart completely, and over the last few years we've been reconnecting to bring the two organizations back together again. So yeah, if there is need for funding, for instance, the Ship Structures Committee participates. The Hull Structures Committee participates with the Ship Structure Committee, which is a group that's made up of a number of other organizations: the U.S. Navy, the Canadian Navy and Coast Guard, ABS, the U.S. Coast Guard, and they fund ship structure research. The organizations typically put in some money each, and every year they get. Well, I've being one of the people that gets an opportunity to review the proposals, I've seen as many as 30 proposals in a single year for funding for projects in the around 100 to maybe a little over $100,000 worth of research by an organization, and maybe one person who's managing the program, but their work is done by companies as well, as individuals and companies. So does that answer your question about funding for research? It's something you'd have to explore on an individual basis, and if there's a requirement for funding something outside the normal channels, we do have mechanisms for proposing that, and you can work with the committee and panel chairs to get funding outside of SNAME, which is something that, you know, what we have fairly limited resources for big projects. So but we do work with other organizations. So there are ways. Did you have a particular project in mind, or that's just a general question?
Well, mainly general.
Okay.
With
questions, but yeah, I had a couple of, because I'm seeing like there are some sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry, I lost connection for a bit. Yeah, well, your answer covers me. Well, mainly I had it as a general question, but yeah, my understanding is that I should contact the chairman of the panel individually for more detailed questions, I suppose.
Yes, I think so, because everything in the TNR program really starts at the panel level and moves upward from there. Virtually all of the research, the TNR bulletins, they start at the panel level, and then with a collaboration of panel members, usually, even though the instigation may be one person, getting a few people together to support that, and then it moves upward through the committee, perhaps involving other panels. We do have things where more than one panel and more than one committee work together on projects that are larger, and if it needs funding, that's where you would decide that you needed external support, and the appropriate people and the chairs of the panels would help work through the process of writing proposals and whatever is needed to get that support.
There have been a number of seed projects where the panel does some of the work under and there's some funding, and then it really proposes a much greater activity. The maneuvering panel, for instance, noticed that the Houston Ship Channel was being widened and deepened several years ago, and decided to put together a project to see what the value of testing some real ships in the channel before and after that widening and deepening. So there was a seed project that looked at what could be done, and that was taken to other agencies, and the Corps of Engineers came through with a much larger project to actually do some of the gathering of the data. Other projects also simply put SNAME as some of the pot, and the project would be done if the other groups tie in with some further funding or in-kind kind of efforts. So a lot of possibilities.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome. One thing that we haven't explored, as far as I know, is I know the EU does fund quite a bit of research through other organizations, that I'm aware of through model testing and things that we do with Marin and SSPA. But there are joint industry projects that are funded there. That is an avenue of potential funding that we've never explored. But I think as we move forward, and we have many more people that are not only active members but live on that side of the pond, it would be very beneficial to our organization, and I think the industry in general, if we can explore those sources of funding as well.
Yeah, my question was mainly based on that, on the EU projects, because personally I'm on that side of the world. So.
Yep. Well, I know that the EU has funded a number of very good projects in the marine industry over the last 10 or 12 years. The ones that I'm mostly aware of are on the hydrodynamics and marine pollution side, but I know there's quite a bit of activity. But that is a source of funding and a mechanism that I know it exists, but I don't know how to approach it. But I do know that it requires people from the EU to be active participants and proposers. So, that's some place where if you have an interest and know that you could help us develop that source of funding as well as finding something to do that you enjoy and find useful.
Yeah, that was my general idea. because there are more projects coming from EU, and it would be good for everyone to, if we could utilize those.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Now, because we span so many time zones, and I realize it's late afternoon for you, we do have every committee has its a dial-in phone number that for using for teleconferences, and we've been encouraging the panel chairs to use that. The use of the GoToMeeting right now, we do have Eric has one license for us, and headquarters shares that with us, and if we develop forward where there's use, where there are multiple groups that want to use that at the same time, then we may have to expand that. But GoToMeeting or Skype is a way that we can share not just voice but video and share our screens, and makes it easier to share technical information than just a teleconference. But the teleconference discussions that I've been participating in have been very, very helpful. And it is because travel money is so hard to come by these days, we found that meeting electronically is frequently our best and sometimes only way of getting together.
Yeah, that's true.
So Nikos, if you have an idea for a project that you'd like to put forward, if you can't find the panel you like, please feel free. You can send any proposal ideas you have to Alex Landsberg, or me, and we'll see what we can do to put together to help put together a team.
All right, perfect. Thank you for that.
Sure. Bjorn, you've been very quiet.
Yeah, no, very, very new to the TNR, didn't know much about it, so just trying to get my balls straight and everything, and definitely going to do some research and find out exactly, what kind of panel I might be looking into joining. But yeah, y'all done well, answered all my questions for sure.
Great. Well, if you have, like I said, if you have a particular interest, what are you interested in? What is your primary interest?
I mean, I do a lot of work in hull structure, and then also weight engineering as well as ship production.
Okay. Well, I know that Roger Basu with the Hull Structure Committee is he's been very active in terms of building, putting that group together and bringing it up to speed, where it had a period where we were in transition on managers, and it slowed up a little bit, and he's got it running again and bringing his panels back up online, and I'm sure that he'd love to have new members, and there's nothing that says that you can't belong to more than one panel or committee. The only thing that I would ask is that if we don't want people to just join committees to put them on their resume. We do want people that are interested. So you could contact Roger, and Hull Structures Committee would be a good start for your structure side. And you said your weight engineering, that would be under the tech design panel here. SD1 is the weight engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And I think is that Alex? You can help me out here. That was
David.
Bill Garsky, wasn't it? But that's changed panel chairs lately.
The weights panel, David Hansch is a new chair there. Got a lot of projects started, or beginning to be started. That'd be a great panel to join if you're interested in structures.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'll definitely shoot some emails out to them.
Yeah, just please, when you send it, you can get the contact information for the chairs directly off the website. But when you send something, please just CC me on it. Just so that I know that you've reached out, and and that the chairs are responding to you. Because if you don't get an answer from them, then I'll have to give them a little prod. But I think those folks are pretty proactive, and I would expect that you would get a response from them.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for wanting to be active. No, I think you'll find that the biggest benefit that you'll have out of participating in the TNR program is the fact that you get to stay current with a lot of things that are going on on the technical side of our business. If you're not active in the TNR program, as you move away from your technical days, in the first 10 or 12 years of your career, for instance, and maybe move more towards a management position in the industry, you start to lose touch with the technical side, and you don't know all of the good things that are going on, and you can't take advantage of what you don't know. There's a lot of good stuff that goes on in the marine business, and you can't use it in your business or your technical efforts if you don't know. But if you stay involved with the technical community, which you would through TNR, then you have that advantage of being able to stay current and to contribute, which I always felt good too. So, for what that's worth.
And you'll meet a lot of people of similar interests.
Yes. Yeah, it's a great place to network. Okay.
Oh, well, that definitely sounds like something I'd be interested in.
Yeah. Well, scratch that itch. Good. Okay. Well, we're coming up on our hour, so if there were any last things we can answer. Good. Well, I think Stephen says that we helped answer his questions. If you have others, feel free to contact me. One thing that after a little bit of email discussion with Eric yesterday, I think that we'll have maybe some regular opportunities using the GoToMeeting for people to dial in and ask questions on TNR and just to talk about the TNR program. Maybe do one every few months, and we'll announce that in the TNR in the little TNR section in the weekly newsletters, like we did the TNR program. Remember, I want you. So that's the way it goes. Okay, great. So I guess if there isn't anything else at the moment, the folks at headquarters, was there anything you wanted to say in closing?
No, Rick. I think there's some other discussions we need to have. I mean, I think some of what you verbalized early in the discussion here about the activities at some of the various panels, we should capture some of that and make that available to people. That's an ongoing effort that I have, because we don't have a way of just looking at this document in these boxes and seeing which ones are active, but we know which ones are, and making that more visible will be helpful.
Yeah, I agree, and that was one of the things that we wanted to do with our effort of identifying inactive panels this year. So I'm hoping that within the next 6 months we'll have a very good picture of it, the active and inactive, and then we have to figure out how to make that available easily so that everyone in the organization can see it immediately.
Yeah. Okay, we'll continue. On the regulatory front, I still think we'd benefit from a little bit of energy in this community looking at Rule Finder. As I said, the last review, given the high level of interest in all these regulatory activities, although that can take on several different meanings, which has a big impact on what you do to organize around it. There's the last look that we had at Rule Finder was done by a group that I just don't know that if the assessment was particularly effective or well organized, and TNR may have a very different perspective on that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Rule Finder can be pretty useful.
Well, we have an ability to influence how it gets what content it presents. And so if we think that there's something beneficial there in the portal itself, we can work out an arrangement that's beneficial for both them and for our membership that would include a broader array of standards. And so that's where the opportunity is. So assessing it in terms of its utility to start with is one thing. And then the second thing is entering into some discussion about how we can help to bring in some of the content that's not there now. And offsetting that is some financial benefit for our members.
Right.
Can Rule Finder maybe focus in on what's happening in any subject area?
I don't know what you mean by what's happening.
Well, if we pick one panel, stability, can Rule Finder go in and look for all of the issues that might be stability related? Or can it at least look at all issues that are coming up?
I don't know. I'm not sure I understand what you mean by look at. I mean, there are business intelligence tools that scan communities and discussion threads and news items and so on, and report back what kind of concentrated discussion there is on certain topics. That's not what Rule Finder is. Rule Finder Rule Finder only deals with standards after they're developed.
Is it
so
regulations
and regulations? So this question about when we say we want something to do with regulations, what does that mean? Are we talking about influencing the development? Or are we talking about informing what our audience is about what the implementation impacts are, or deadlines, or hot issues? Or are we talking about after they're developed, which ones apply, and what do you have to be attentive to depending on the business that you're in? Those all have somewhat different attributes when you talk about producing some kind of service for our membership.
So Rule Finder is basically if it's an existing regulation within a certain country, that's all it is.
Well, it's all it is. It's not in a country. It's not country defined. It's ABYC. It's Coast Guard. It's class rules. It's ISO. The portal, it has the capability of plugging into virtually anything that has the right kind of data format. And almost all of this stuff is being delivered in some kind of XML format now. But there's still effort and work in getting permissions for people to supply their content, and in pricing, what's the reasonable, business proposition for giving access to people.
So it's a good source for obtaining rules.
Right. Not just obtaining them, for obtaining them relative to specific needs.
Yeah. I mean, an ISO document costs a lot of money.
Right.
So this is a tool that can be used by any of our panels.
That's right.
To pull out the documents that are needed.
That's right. Yes.
So a lot of the panels are involved with the development of the new or the changes, and analyzing the old and thinking about what the new should be.
Right. So I mean, in my sense of this is that we would benefit from being a little more specific when we're talking about we want something to do with regulations. Are we talking about somebody sitting around reading the CFR and and telling us what's coming up next week? That's one kind of angle on it. I have a particular kind of project. What rules might I select from, or might be applicable, or which are required to be applied? That's kind of another problem. And then there's the input into the development and the impact on industry and what the practicalities of certain proposals are and things like that, which is kind of another type of activity. At least in my view, those are the three kinds of areas, if we're talking about this, where where we would benefit from being a little more specific about what we're interested in.